Hello, welcome back to Strong as You Think. Today, I want to talk about weight loss, and I want to talk a little bit about that in conjunction with last week. We talked about behaviors that we do to avoid feeling something or doing something that just we avoid things that we don't want. So a lot of times when we're worried about our weight, some of the things that cause our weight is some behaviors that we're using to avoid something else. Like we're eating things we don't want to eat. We're eating more than we want to eat in order to avoid feeling a certain way, because some of the chemicals that we get when we eat certain foods make us feel better, right? And can distract us from feeling a certain way. They can distract us from doing something that we want to do. But often it's feeling a certain way. So we use these behaviors, whether it's just the act of getting the food and putting it in our mouths and doing that can kind of distract us from our thoughts and our feelings, and the reaction, the physical reaction we get when we eat those things. Okay. So we can be eating more often than we want to, and that causes us to gain weight. We can be eating foods that we've decided that we don't want to, that we've said aren't probably the best thing for us, and that can also cause us to gain weight. And so what's going to happen is we're going to decide, I'm not going to eat those things anymore. I'm not going to eat at these times. And we use our willpower, and that works for a while. But what happens is we start to feel those feelings again. And sometimes before we even know it, we start eating to numb those feelings. Like I've talked to people, and it's even happened to me sometimes. Before I even thought about it, they're like, oh, I was eating. And we've kind of conditioned ourselves to that's how we react to things that we don't like, to these uncomfortable feelings. Okay. So if we're having these uncomfortable feelings all the time and we don't really want to deal with them, it's going to make it really hard for us to keep eating in a way that we've decided that we want to, because our way of dealing with those feelings is to eat. And so it's really tough to just willpower our way out of that. But if we start taking that as a sign that there's something that we want to look at with those feelings, then we find other ways of dealing with those feelings, and we don't have to eat. And sometimes, a lot of times, an effective way to do that is catching that you have an urge to eat, you have a craving. And basically, you don't say, I'm not having it, but you sit with it and say, okay, I want to eat that. I'm not going to, and kind of just sit. This is what it feels like to want that, to be hungry. And often it will pass, but it takes practice. So it's one of my coaching mentors has recommended, put a little rock in a jar every time you feel the craving, and don't act on it, because it'll get easier as it goes. And it's not just willpower. And what is difficult sometimes is that when you have to address the feeling now and acknowledge it, because you're not eating your feelings away. Okay. So that's something. It's going to take a little bit of time, most likely, but it will be worth it. Okay. So I urge you to not just work on the diet or the exercise, but you're going to work on having the cravings and the urge to eat and not doing it. You're going to practice that. And as you do that, the desire starts to become less. Okay. So that's a big part of what I can work on with you with your weight when you want to control your weight. There's also another element is that when our bodies are dealing with stress, when they don't feel comfortable, when they don't feel safe, physically, sometimes they like to put on a layer, like in like not recent history, but past evolutionary history, our bodies would sometimes, when they don't feel safe, meant we weren't getting enough food, meant we weren't warm enough. And so holding on to extra calories was something that our bodies are basically programmed to do when we don't feel safe. So even if we're eating a lot of the ways we want to eat and doing those types of things, sometimes our bodies will still want to hang on to weight. And sometimes that's because we have a lot of stress and a lot of not feeling safe going on in our lives. Okay. It's trying to protect us. So until we feel safe, our body's going to continue to hold on to that weight. And that's part of what the stress response does. Okay. And it's interesting because sometimes what makes us feel unsafe is our own negative thoughts. We don't feel safe in our own body. And so then our bodies don't know the difference, though, if it's coming from inside or outside. And it wants to hang on to that weight. So I want you to work on like really understanding when you don't feel comfortable and when you don't feel safe and when you feel stressed, how that's affecting your whole body, right? That the way our bodies have been designed, that when we feel those kinds of feelings, that our body wants to protect us and it thinks it's protecting us by doing that weight. But in our world now, that's not really the solution to the kinds of problems that we have. So we have to work on those problems to get our bodies to really start letting go of that. So this is something I can work with you in some of our one-on-one coaching, or it's just something that you can work on yourself, but knowing that there's the actual behaviors, that we do to avoid our feelings that can cause that weight to be there. But even beyond just the actual calories we're taking in is the way our bodies hang on to those calories by whether we feel safe or stressed. Okay. So understanding that will hopefully help you to have a better plan on how to take care of you and therefore take care of your weight. All right. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time on Strong as You Think. Bye.